My teacher assigned me to factor the number 63. So my first step is going to be to write my heading or title on my note card. Factors of 63. Now I know that 1 and my number are always going to be factors, but I also know that I cannot fit 63 by 1 across this as an array, so I'm going to start with 2 and see if I can fit 2 in that number. 63 is an odd number, so I know that 2 is not going to go into it evenly. So my next step is to think if the number 3 will go into 63. A fast way to do that is to take my calculator and take 63 and divide that by 3. Since I got an even whole number without any decimals, I know that 21 times 3 gives me 63. So 3 times 21 is 63, so 3 and 21 are factors of 63. Okay, so now I have made my array of 63 by making 3 rows of 21. My next step is to check my next number. So I've checked 1 times 63 equals 63. 2 I knew could not be a factor because 63 is an odd number. 3 we just checked by taking 63 divided by 3. Now I'm going to check 4 on my calculator by taking 63 and dividing it by 4 to see if I get an even whole number. I ended up with a decimal, which tells me that this is not a factor. So 4 is not a factor, so I'm going to cross out the number 4. I'm going to move to number 5. And I'm going to take 63 divided by 5. And really I wouldn't have to do this because I know 63 does not end in a 0 or a 5. So 5 cannot be a factor, and I can prove that by taking 63 divided by 5. And I get a decimal point. So I know that that is not a factor, it's not a whole number. I can also know that 6 is not a factor because 6 times 10 is 60, and I would need 6 more to make my next number. So 6 is not going to work. Now I'm going to try 7. I'm going to do 63 divided by 7, and I get 9. Oh, I know 9 times 7 equals 63. So 7 is a factor and 9 is a factor. That tells me that 8 is not a factor because I've now met in the middle of my numbers. So now I'm going to make my next array of 7 rows of 9 to make 7 times 9. Okay, so I just finished making my array, 9 rows of 7. 9 times 7 equals 63. So like I said before, I can't fit 1 of 63 across. It just wouldn't fit on my note card, but I'm going to remember to write that down here in my list of factors. So now I have all of my factors, and I'm going to record them at the bottom of my card. So I'm going to start with 1 and 63. Okay, I've recorded them farther apart. And then I'm going to go to 3 and 21. Okay, and then my middle two are 7 times 9. So now I have my list of factors from least to greatest: 1, 3, 7, 9, 21, and 63. So now my job is to connect those. I'm going to take and draw an arrow from the 1 to the 63. And then my 3 times 21, I used orange. And my 7 times 9, I used blue. Okay, my card is now complete. A couple of tips to get you started are you're always going to have your calculator to use, but just like I did here, I would make a list of numbers that you can cross-check and record your factors then at the bottom. So when you start, I would just start by writing the numbers at least 1 through 12. And you can keep going. Especially for larger numbers, you might want to even go up to 20. And that's going to be the list of numbers that you are going to work with. So again, I had 63. That was the number that I am factoring. I know that 1 is always going to be a factor of every number because any number times 1 is always going to be that number. So 1 always works. When you go to the number 2, if your number ends with an even number, 2 is going to be a factor of that number. This number does not end with an even number, so 2 is not going to be a factor. Then I move on to number 3, and remember that I went to my calculator, and to do that I take the number that I'm trying to factor, I put it into my calculator, and I divide it by the number I'm trying to see if it goes into that, so I'm going to divide it by 3. Remember that if I get a whole number without any decimal points after it, that means that 3 would be a factor, and it's going to tell me what I multiply it by to get that. So 3 is a factor because 21 does not have any decimal points after it. So I know that 3 is another factor, and I just found out that it is 3 times 21. So those were all the steps that I went through. I'm going to keep going through all of these numbers. We know from earlier that 4 was not a factor, 5 was not a factor, 6 was not a factor, but 7 times 9 was 63. That means that 8's not going to be a factor, and I've now closed my gap, so I know that none of these numbers are going to be factors. Good luck!